Hi, my name is Muslim Albakri. I'm a Singapore qualified lawyer. I practice mainly disputes work, so that's litigation work, going to court, representing clients in court. And I'm currently the managing director of my own company, Albakri LLC. And it's been about a year now since I made the decision to branch out and be my own boss. Yeah. Broadly speaking, there are two main sort of disciplines of law. Okay, one is litigious work, basically court work, litigation, disputes, and the other is corporate work. Okay, so corporate work is dealing with corporate issues, corporate governance, contracts, agreements. If I could illustrate the relationship between these two opposing areas, corporate work is basically the exercise of bringing people together, right? Helping them merge, helping them reach an agreement, a consensus, a middle ground, with a view to, to creating a commercial relationship. Litigious work is what happens when that relationship turns sour, and when there's a fallout, what happens? Parties have to assert their rights, have to make claims for their rights, and that's where the litigation lawyers come in to represent parties in a private dispute. Okay, so that would be a very broad understanding of the legal practice. I think I'm not able to really tell you how many different disciplines there are. As we speak, there are more and more areas of law which are emerging and becoming more relevant as well. Yeah. Okay, I'm primarily a litigation lawyer. So I do commercial litigation and I do criminal litigation. Commercial litigation is, like I mentioned earlier, essentially a dispute between two private individuals or companies or entities, typically arising out of a sort of a commercial relationship. So it could be anything ranging from something as simple as a simple breach of contract for the supply of goods and services, to something a lot more complex, involving internal company disputes between directors, shareholders, breach of duties to the company, so on and so forth. So commercial litigation is really quite a large spectrum of disputes. I also practice criminal litigation. Criminal litigation is where a private individual or company is prosecuted under the law by the Attorneys General Chambers in respect of an alleged offence under Singapore law. Okay, so unlike commercial litigation, which are typically private individuals or companies, private entities, criminal litigation usually has a public entity, the Attorney General's Chambers, to represent the interests of the state in prosecuting individuals for criminal acts. So those are my two main areas of practice. Of course, I do also practice in other type areas such as estate planning, a bit of divorce work and a bit of corporate work as well. But those two areas are my expertise primarily. So many people have actually asked me whether the legal profession is like what is shown in shows such as Boston Legal, Suits, Ally McBeal for the older viewers out there. I think that such shows only show a very, very limited aspect of the legal profession. Obviously, the more glamorous and sensational side of things, there is a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of grunt work, before you can even hope to appear in court and make that sweeping argument which will captivate the judge and the whole court. There is potentially 50 hours of research behind the scenes, drafting, research, filing, bundling. So there is a lot more to it than what is shown on TV, obviously, the back end side of things, and that is just as important, if not more important, than the actual showing up and arguing in court. So is it very reflective? Not really. And after putting in those 50 or so hours, behind the matter, I challenge you to look as good as the people on the TV as well. Firstly, I do believe that everyone should have a fair trial, or should have opportunity to tell their story, right? When a client comes to me at the first instance, my job is not to be his mouthpiece or to run any story that he wants. My job is to first test this story and to determine the truth behind his story, right? So I ask questions that I know, the judge will ask, or the prosecution are going to pick up on. I ask the questions to try and poke holes in his story, and if his story holds up, okay, there's no evidence, contradicting it, or there's nothing for me to dispute it or contradict it, then sure, I can give him the benefit of the doubt. And of course, I don't do the judging. I just run his story, and I leave it to the court to decide. So I don't have any issues in that regard. Of course, if a client comes to me, and it's quite clear that he's done something wrong, my role is then to advise him to take responsibility and to try and mitigate the kind of sentence that he receives. So that would entail me bringing or highlighting to the court, certain extenuating circumstances or personal circumstances which the court should rightly take into consideration when imposing a sentence. You have to bear in mind as well that no client is going to come to you and say, I did this and this, help defend me and say whatever you need to. No one is going to say that. Your clients are going to come to you with their own version of the story, and a good lawyer will be able to poke holes in the story and tell the client that, look, this doesn't make sense. So that's how I deal with it. Yeah, that's how I deal with the so-called moral or ethical conundrum and representing clients. Because at the end of the day, I have a responsibility to make sure that whatever I'm saying in court is backed up by the truth, or at least I can give that person the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm not just a mouthpiece. In my opinion, having been a lawyer for close to 6 years now, I think the legal profession can at times be very grueling, can be very challenging. It's not uncommon to see people feeling quite jaded from the profession. So what makes a good lawyer to me is someone who is resilient, someone who has a dogged determination, and it helps a lot to have interpersonal skills, because client management, managing people's expectations, dealing with stakeholders and all that is quite an integral part of the job as well. So those three things are, I think would be quite useful for a lawyer. So on the issue of emerging, legal areas, I think one thing that is at the forefront of the legal landscape is commercial litigation in relation to cryptocurrencies. And as we know, cryptocurrency has become a huge thing over the last few years. It's really changed what we know and what we have come to perceive of businesses and customer relations and everything like that. So it would naturally follow that the law will have to grapple and adapt to these new business realities in accordance with established and traditional legal principles. So that's one area that is is emerging and will continue to develop and change the law. Very exciting. Another thing which perhaps is a bit more pertinent to Singapore is the area of Islamic estate planning. It's something that I've observed over the last few years as well. I think that as our community continues to make further strides and progress, we are also seeing an increase in the amount of clients that require more intricate, more advanced legal solutions to manage their assets and to prepare their legacies for when they pass away. So these two, and the second area, especially Islamic estate planning, is something which is something which madrasah students in particular would be familiar with, or would have a foundation with. And in fact, coming from a madrasah background myself, I find that I've had a foundational knowledge of Islamic estate planning from a very young age, and it's definitely helped me in my practice as well. And I can foresee that this will also be something that places madrasah students who wish to enter into the legal profession at somewhat of an advantage. For young law graduates who are about to enter the profession, I think it is very important for them to do their best to try and have a very transparent and full understanding of what the profession entails. It is not something which is an easy profession, okay? It is something that will take a lot out of you. So it helps to tailor your expectations at the outset. Okay, it's not meant to scare law graduates, but it's the reality of the profession, and it's why the profession generally has quite a high turnover rate. Similarly, I think it is important for young law graduates to try and expose themselves to different areas of law at the early stages of their career, instead of pigeonholing themselves or compartmentalizing themselves in a specific area too soon. That's because you want some time to try and figure out where your favorite area of practice is, where your strengths lie in, what you feel that suits your personality, your temperament the most, and hopefully that will bring you to where you need to be in your legal profession. Because at the end of the day, all the money and all the so-called prestige of being a lawyer will be stripped away. It will be ground out of you, and what's important is to find something about the legal profession that really speaks to you, that drives you on. That's the only thing that will keep you in the profession. So that's my hard truth advice for young law graduates.